Okay. Okay. By the way, just so you know, I told my granddaughter asked me if she can help me next time. I said, yes, you can. I need help with the technology. Okay. So we're up to 19 and hopefully it'll show. Anyways, okay. So prevention. Now here it says prevention is all students K through 3, but I say prevention really starts at the age of 3. You can do a lot of work. I mentioned last night that my oldest daughter had it. My son and my son didn't have it at all. Like I started with him at 3 years old because I was so concerned. But my third child, I don't know if she had it or not, but I felt that she started a little bit with it, and I put her right away at 3 years old into language therapy and pre-reading therapy. So you can start this very early, okay? Then there's the prevention part. Then there's like, okay, but now your child's in kindergarten and still not and is at risk, okay? And that's when you start doing intervention. And hopefully the multisensory reading intervention prevents the learning disability category, but it doesn't always, okay? So it's not like it's sometimes you have to go into that category because, the kid is just not picking it up and picks it up later, okay? All right. Prevention and early intervention. So parents ask me this, teachers ask me, what can we do? And everybody says, what age should we start reading? Because, again, there's a spectrum, right? Some kids develop at 3 or 4, some kids 5, 6, some kids 7 and 8. But any kind of early phonics, sound, symbol relationships should be done early. And I also want to talk about precursor behavior. So if you noticed in that video, right, I'm sitting there with my grandchild. Is she sitting? Is she sitting when I do that video?
No, she's not.
No.
Not really, right? But what is she doing?
Moving.
She's playing back and forth.
Right, right, exactly. So, and it's okay. I'm using her as my model, right? She has a really hard time sitting. And you see that turns into a really hard time reading. You see that? Where you make more mistakes because you're not sitting and you're not focused. And that is why a precursor behavior is sitting at a table, which is why I encourage parents of 2-year-olds to teach their children to sit at young tables. They don't have to be the regular table, but to be able to sit, because it is a precursor behavior and it is something that kids who don't sit struggle with. Number 2, do you hear me say this thing called finger on the place? One of the most important precursor behaviors is gesturing. Can I point? Can my eyes focus on the pointing? Some of the early things we do with kids as babies on the floor is use a light back and forth to get their eyes to do movements. If we know in early intervention that a child was born with cerebral palsy or any kind of birth trauma, one of the things that we do in early intervention is using black and white cards to go back and forth, to move their eyes back and forth. Also teaching them how to point, because you see it is very, very important that she actually points to the word. She makes the mistake when she isn't pointing to the word. Okay? So those are very important precursor behaviors. If they don't have them, then you have to teach it. You have to practice. Let's point. Point to the apple. Show me the apple. Parents that are reading children books at the age of 2, show, like the Spot books is excellent. Point to Spot. Point to the ball. Show mommy the toy. Okay? Because it's getting them to focus. Okay. This is the most important, critical slide that I'm going to talk about tonight, okay? Because what I'm trying to do is move you from the introduction to the beautiful people that went before us, like Orton Gillingham and Samuel Kirk, to today. What am I going to do as a reading teacher? And these are the 10 critical points that I'm going to use when I am now taking that into a 10-part lesson. Because remember, this program was designed for kids that actually struggle. Their left brain is hard. It's not as sharpened. We say use it on everybody, and it benefits every child to be taught this way. The children who don't have learning disabilities, who don't have dyslexia, will move very quickly through these parts. The kids that do have those issues will go much slower. Okay, so what's the 10 critical parts? And I want to go over this, and then I'll probably stop for questions. We teach the sounds until they are automatic. Okay, this is the accuracy part. They must know the sounds. I work with so many kids that were just never taught the sounds. They don't know what OU is. They don't know what AU is. They don't know some of the sounds. So therefore, when they get stuck with a word, they don't know how to figure it out. Okay? In that story that you saw, in that video that you saw me with my grandchild, she had to know that there are two sounds for I, right? There's the I, which we talked about yesterday in the short vowel sound. But if you have a silent E at the end of the word, it's I. So that's the long vowel sound. She has to know the sounds in order to be able to read. Then we teach total word structure, okay? Because it's very nice if you can sound out, but at some point you got to know the word, right? So in the beginning, you're saying k, a, t, but then you're showing her words, cat, getting her used to it to be able to get it quicker, okay? We present concepts with controlled text. We do not overwhelm our students with books that they cannot read. We do not encourage guessing. Here, take out a Shakespeare book, right? When they are at a second grade level, right? And torture them. It's controlled text. She had just learned the silent E rule. So that's why she was reading a book with a lot of words that had silent E. We present structure in the language in the system. Hold on one second. We present structure of language in systematic, cumulative manner. So we teach new, but we review old. Okay? We teach all the principles of the English structure directly and thoroughly. We do not expect them to know the syllables if we haven't taught them the syllables. We do not expect them to know ALL is all unless we've taught it as a sound. Teach and reinforce concepts: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile. We teach it visually. We teach it through talking, like what makes the A sound. Kinesthetic, I told you about this whole body. Tactile, we're going to show you things that you're going to move your fine motor, okay? We teach phonemic and syllabic segmentation. And this is very important because my granddaughter had a book that was way too hard for her. She started because I started reading with her because I walked by and I saw my daughter having multisyllabic words and she had no idea how to break up syllables. So she didn't know what she was doing. We don't do multiple syllables until we master first words. Include constant review and constant repetition. Use question techniques, right? For reinforcement. That was what I was saying. Let's look at that word. What does the silent E do? And use diagnostic teaching. What is she missing? I figured out that she didn't know the silent E rule because I saw her missing all the words. So then I went back and I taught it to her. Now she's still not accurate as you saw in the video, but she can find the mistake. Okay? So I'm going to end this portion. I cannot get through everything. I wish I could. But I'm going to end this portion with one more number and one more question. So the question is, and it's from all the way from the beginning. What are some of the key factors that influence the effectiveness of multisensory? In other words, what makes a kid who we're teaching, one, go like this and get it, and within a year is reading? And what are some of the factors that prevent them from getting it as quick? And the number that I'm calling on is number 3. Anybody have number 3? Anybody want to touch that question? Going once? Going twice? Okay. What about the number 6? Anybody have the number 6? Okay, I'm going to address that question as the last thing for tonight, unless anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to address that question because I think it's it's actually really important.
Oh, so I actually had a question.
Sure.
Regarding, you mentioned pointing.
Yes.
And I noticed with my own, I work at LEC, so I do grades 2 to 5
Great.
reading fluency.
Yeah.
So I noticed, that pointing definitely, it really helps a lot. But for some reason, I think the reason is like a lot of boys find it to be like babyish.
Yes, 100%.
So I'm not sure, but it definitely helps, like, especially when it comes to, since it's fluency, they're trying to read it fluently, but they end up skipping
Yeah.
words, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that's why there have to be, I'll go back to my BCBA again. If you have a fluent reader, they don't need to point, right? Pointing is for the non-fluent readers. Even though I am a fluent reader at this point for praying, but I still point, right? It's an excellent, wonderful technique that helps you focus. And I think that we have not taught it as the tool that it really is. And that's why people say, I don't want to do it. I don't want to, it's uncomfortable because they see other people in the real world and they're not pointing. But there are ways to do it. Another way to do it that may be more palatable to your voice is, we used to have these rulers. I don't know if you've ever seen them before, and they have like different colors.
Yeah, yes. I know what you're talking about.
And that also, like, you may want to give them choices. So if you don't want to use your finger, use a ruler. If you don't want to use a ruler, like, give them options.
Choice, yeah. Okay.
Because I think
that's
that
a good idea.
If they chose what they're using, it would make it so much easier. Remember that most of the kids I'm working with is one-on-one, so they don't have that embarrassment of being in a classroom. But any tool, it could be a little flashlight, like giving out flashlights. I think flashlights are very powerful. Any tool that they will say, "Ooh, this is cool," like a laser,
Yeah.
And
really?
Laser, that's fine. That's just as good.
So basically, give them options. Give them options.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Okay, so
Can I just say something?
Yeah, sure.
So just on the topic of pointing, an idea that I've seen some teachers use that's very motivating is everyone points with like a popsicle stick, and then they put stickers on it.
Yeah, I love that.
Like walking around as they see people pointing.
Yeah, anything to encourage that is really important, because it's very interesting, but we do a lot of IQ testing in my office, and one of the parts of the sections of the IQ test is this decoding part. It's not done with letters, it's just done with symbols. Any kid that points can get through that decoding part much quicker than the kids that don't. So I don't think we make enough of a big deal about this concept of pointing. It's really, really, really going to help them. and it's a helpful tool. I just want to go back to that original question that nobody wanted to answer, or maybe nobody got the number. Important precursors, both in behaviors as well as in neurological development. So if a kid has intellectual deficits, reading is going to be a struggle. It's not that they can't learn it, but it's definitely going to take longer. So there's a certain IQ number that a kid has to have. They have to have a certain amount of cognition in order to do reading. And that's important because when you are sitting in a class, you may not know the IQ numbers of your students, but you have to know their cognition, and you can see it in their language development and things like that. Second thing is, surprisingly, physical development is very important to reading. So we find that children with cerebral palsy that have a gait that they're not walking straight, right? They have a problem reading. It's all because of that balance. It's a full body experience to be able to be literate. And so actually they say that one of the number one helpful things for kids is dancing, actually, because dancing is one of the few activities that do right and left brain at the same time. And reading is one of those activities. It's a both right and left brain activity. So kids that are having balancing physical disabilities, kids that have intellectual disabilities, the general low functioning autism, which has cognition issues, obviously is a problem. High functioning autistic kids have an interesting phenomenon. They are good decoders because they study patterns. If you study those type of students, they're very good at decoding. However, they will not get any contextual cues because they're actually so left brain and so organized and line things up. I've worked with 3-year-old high functioning autistic kids who are constantly lining up objects. They pick up reading very quickly because they're just natural decoders, but their comprehension skills are just like, they can't do any of the inference high level reading textual questions. So it's an interesting phenomenon there. The level of dyslexia or learning disability, you know, how impaired that left brain is important. And then another big issue, and I talked about it last night, is trauma. You know, are they getting, well, first of all, there's just the basics, you know, Maslow's, you know, are they getting good nutrition? Are they getting a good enough sleep? Are they getting some attention? There are things that children need in order to make progression. And then also any type of trauma and anxiety does not help the situation because it floods the brain, and we need the right and the left brain working in sync in order to do reading. So maybe we'll have new research coming out of Israel with all the traumatized children. I don't know. But war-torn children, we do know this, that children living through war zones tend to be behind in reading. So we do know that trauma does affect the reading process. Any other questions before we end?
Yes, I have a question. I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but I find one of the most challenging parts of applying the Wilson method as a reading specialist is you talked about the 5 components in reading, especially in the reading comprehension. How can I apply maybe to do a multisensory lesson plan for reading comprehension, which is for me?
One area specific to Wilson that they are not strong in is reading comprehension. I have started using a few other programs to supplement Wilson. One of them is visualization verbalization, which teaches, because I think just like you have to teach the reading process, you have to teach the visualization process today. And so probably after this, in October, I'm going to do a training on that process, okay? Because that'll help with vocabulary acquisition as well as text comprehension. Another thing, I don't know if you noticed, I was reading with her from a book called Reading Bright. I'm a big proponent of those. Those books are actually, Wilson doesn't have enough decodable text. They don't have enough practice. There's another company out there that basically, based on phonics instruction, created like hundreds of books that kids can practice with, and excellent, both for school and for home, which I find much better. And then also they're based on that phonics. So again, text comprehension can be a lot of different issues. It could be an issue that they are not actually reading accurately. It could be an issue that they're not fluent enough. And then it could be, which is the worst part of all, they really don't get it. They don't see the movie in their mind because kids are so exposed. Even without TVs, they are still very exposed to movies, to videos, to WhatsApps. I mean, even within the most supposedly non-exposed communities, I haven't done the Amish yet, but even within our non-exposed communities, our kids are very video-based. Therefore, that part of their brain that develops the imagery inside of their mind is becoming less and less developed. And Wilson doesn't really address it. A program called Visualization Verbalization does. Just like we have to teach the rules of decoding, we actually have to go back and teach kids today how to visualize in their minds, because we have given them video so early that their right brain has not developed how to actually see this in their brain without a visual picture in front of them. So it's something I'll address, and I'm going to do that for all Tree of Knowledge teachers beginning of November, like in the end of October, beginning of November. It's not a strength of Wilson. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. So please review, go on the YouTube channel. You should be getting, if you send me an email, we'll send you out the YouTube channels so you can see this is all being recorded. So we upload it. But next week, we really get into the heart of the 10-part lesson and all the different tools that we're going to start using to really do proper reading instruction. This is like the end of the introduction. I didn't get through like as much as I would have liked to, but we're going to get through some of it as we go through the 10-part lesson. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.